Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was sidelined during the official family photo of world leaders at the Group of 20 summit in Buenos Aires. Saudi Crown Prince stood at the far edge of the group portrait and was ignored. Prince Mohammed's presence at the international summit has been contentious following the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi at Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October. Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler quickly exited the stage without shaking hands or talking with other leaders. British Prime Minister Theresa May told Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman that he should take action to prevent the recurrence of incidents like the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. May's office said in a readout that the Prime Minister stressed the importance of ensuring that those responsible for the appalling murder of Jamal Khashoggi was held to account. The killing of Washington Post columnist Khashoggi last month at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul has strained Saudi Arabia's ties with the West and battered Prince Mohammed's image abroad. Saudi Arabia has said the prince had no prior knowledge of the killing. US President Donald Trump told reporters in Buenos Aires that he had no discussions with Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman, but then indicated that he might speak with the Saudi royal. He made the comments following a photo op with the Prime Ministers of India and Japan. Trump has so far stood by the Crown Prince, who faces intense scrutiny following the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. The leaders of Mexico, Canada and the US signed a North American Trade Pact after agreeing over the final details of the deal through the eve of the signing. They agreed on a deal in principle to govern the more than $1 trillion of mutual trade. Legislators from the three countries still have to approve the pact, officially known as the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement. The pact will then go into effect and replaces the North American Free Trade Agreement, or the NAFTA. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe offered his congratulations to US President Donald Trump for what he said was a historic victory in the US midterm elections. Reciprocating the gesture, Trump declared the two nations are closer than ever. Abe and Trump met at the G20 meeting in Argentina, where they likely held talks about North Korea and trade. As the world waited for the much-anticipated Trump-Xi bilateral meet on the sidelines of the G20 summit, US President Donald Trump indicated there were some good signs on talks with China ahead of his meeting with Xi Jinping. Trump said US is working very hard to make a deal that would be good. He added that the staff was preparing for the Saturday night dinner. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Buenos Aires. The two leaders met after the informal summit of BRICS nations. Indian Prime Minister said that the year had been very good for the Sino-Indian ties and expressed hope that the following year will be even better. A few months ago, Xi and Modi met during the historic Wuhan summit, during which they resolved to build mutual trust and hold talks whenever an opportunity comes. Relations between the Asian giants were strained last year over a 73-day Doklam standoff, even though several attempts have been made ever since to resolve outstanding issues. Argentina's President Mauricio Macri was left alone on stage amid a misunderstanding with US President Donald Trump, which saw the American walk away during a photograph opportunity. Both leaders were shown shaking hands in front of the photographers before Trump left the stage, with Macri appearing to call after him. It appeared the Argentinian wanted Trump to remain on stage as they waited other world leaders for an official members' family photograph. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman shared a joke at the G20 summit in Buenos Aires. The leaders laughed heartily as they took seats next to each other in the main meeting room. This is the first time Saudi de facto leader is sharing any global stage after dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi's murder. As world leaders gathered for the G20 summit in Argentina, protesters took to the streets of Buenos Aires against hosting the event as the South American country wrestles with a failing economy. Argentina's government, which faces violent protests over its economic austerity program, does not want a repeat of the havoc that overshadowed last year's G20 summit in Germany, when violent protesters blocked streets and bridges leading to the summit venue. But Thursday's protests were peaceful, with youth, theatre groups and the elderly coming out to denounce the G20. A high-ranking Ukrainian official said Ukraine has banned Russian adult men aged between 16 and 60 years from entering Ukraine. Ukraine has expressed fears of Russian invasion after Russia captured Ukrainian vessels off the Crimean coast last weekend. In response to perceived threats, Ukraine has imposed martial law and kept forces along the border on alert. The two countries have been locked in a crisis ever since Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. No progress has been made to bridge the divide between French Yellow Vest protesters and the government on the eve of the second demonstration against fuel prices in Paris. For more than 2 weeks, the Yellow Vest have blocked roads across France in a spontaneous popular rebellion against diesel tax hikes and the high cost of living. It has grown into one of the largest and most stubborn challenges Emmanuel Macron has faced in his 18-month-old presidency. French Prime Minister had earlier agreed to meet protesters, but in a last-minute twist, several of the protesters declined to meet. As millions of Yemenis at risk of starvation, UN humanitarian chief Mark Lowcock called on the conflicting sidelines in the country to join peace talks and urging them to stop fighting and near aid distribution points. The ongoing conflict and Saudi-led blockade have temporarily shut off all access to Yemen, creating a humanitarian crisis. UN agencies say up to 14 million Yemenis are at risk of starvation and urge the Saudi-backed Yemeni government and the Iran-aligned Houthi rebels to join the talks to negotiate a framework for peace and a transitional governing body. A Tokyo court-approved request from prosecutors to extend the detention of former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn by another 10 days. Ghosn was arrested last week for alleged financial misconduct, but the 64-year-old could be detained longer and there is a possibility he could spend Christmas and New Year's Day in detention. Japanese law sets detention limits for a suspect of 23 days for an arrest warrant served by police and 22 days for a warrant served by prosecutors. However, authorities can add further charges with fresh warrants, meaning a person can be detained indefinitely if a court approves it. A powerful earthquake shook southern Alaska, which caused roads to buckle, causing heavy traffic jams in its largest city. The 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck just south of Point McKenzie with an epicenter 8.1 miles north of Anchorage. The quake was followed by numerous aftershocks as videos on social media showed supermarkets with items from shelves strewn across the floors. Lamps were also seen shaking from an office ceiling as the quake occurred. A small aeroplane crashed into a residential area in northern Sao Paulo soon after takeoff, killing 2 people and injuring 12. The plane crashed into a 2-story building and it was unclear whether the victims were in the plane or on the ground. The extent of the injuries was not clear. There was no immediate word on the cause of the crash. Local television networks showed images of the small plane's burned out fuselage hanging off the sides of a burnt out residential building. Thousands of red balloons were released into the sky over Sao Paulo ahead of World AIDS Day. The balloons were released before a small crowd at the Emilio Ribas laboratory, where doctors and scientists are working to combat the virus. The director of the Emilio Ribas lab, Luis Carlos, said that they have noted an uptick in new cases. As the world marks International AIDS Day, experts are warning that HIV infection is spreading in Russia. In Russia, official data shows there were more than 100,000 new HIV diagnoses in 2017, taking total cases to more than 1.2 million. The head of Russian Federal AIDS Center says the increase in those who were HIV infected is very significant, and the number of infected population in the country has already reached 1%. Heavy winter rains, winds and cold temperatures have struck the island of Lesbos, where some 8,000 migrants are living in dire conditions. Most of the migrants live in the overcrowded government-run Moria camp or in the tents in the adjacent forest without proper accommodation, services, sanitation or heating. International aid organizations have heavily criticized the situation on the island and warned of dangers to migrants' health as winter sets in. The migrants are also at risk for makeshift heaters being built in tents to keep warm. A 175-foot smokestack and a slightly smaller water tower came crashing to the ground in New Jersey after a controlled implosion was conducted to make way for a logistics center. The terminal site opened in 1942 and was turned over to the city in 1999. It is now being redeveloped into a complex that is expected to create 2,700 jobs. Over 1,000 activists burned effigies of Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte and his American and Chinese counterpart Donald Trump and Xi Jinping in Manila. Demonstrators marched to the U.S. Embassy in Philippines capital to protest what they call Duterte's close relationship with Washington and Beijing. Activists said that the military and economic agreements between Philippines and the two giants are lopsided. Flash floods have hit wildfire-ravaged U.S. state of California, forcing authorities to deploy rescue teams to save people stuck in vehicles and inundated homes. Authorities said that they used boats to rescue people from their homes and told people in about 100 vehicles to stay in place until the rain receded. More than 30 light art installations were put up on and around the canals of the Dutch capital of Amsterdam. All artworks will be lit simultaneously during the 53-day-long festival in which several international artists and designers are participating. The light show runs until 20th January 2019. The oldest Christmas market in Germany opened for visitors. Hundreds of people brave cold to attend the Dresden Market cum Fair, which is being organized since the year 1434. Germany's former emperor Frederick II had decreed that a market should be held in the days before Christmas so people could stock up for the festivities. Tens of thousands of Indian farmers and rural workers marched to the Indian Parliament in New Delhi to protest against soaring operating costs and plunging produce. Now, farmers from more than 200 groups began gathering in New Delhi, demanding that the government call a special session of Parliament to discuss the crisis in the countryside. As many as 52 underprivileged couples tied the nuptial knot in a mass wedding ceremony in India's northern Moradabad city in the state of Uttar Pradesh. The ceremony was organized under the state government's mass wedding scheme, as the phenomenon has become increasingly popular, especially among the economically backward section. Around 1,000 relatives and friends of the 52 couples attended the event, which saw cash of 20,000 Indian rupees and jewelry being handed out as gifts to the newlyweds.